Now we know Black Lives Matter as a whole was a fraud.
Cities are erupting into chaos and violence.
How long can you be peaceful when your people are dying?
We're out here trying to show them that we're angry.
This is not just about George Floyd. It's about everything that's...
Daily Wire Candace Owens with The Greatest Lie Ever Sold, a movie about the Black Lives Matter movement and the impact it had on the world, and the rest of the story that the media don't speak to us about, as always. So what I'm gonna do right now is to give you a review of that and tell you my perspective and thought after watching it. It really opened my eyes. First of all, I want to say this is not gonna be a full reaction video to the entire movie. I want you to go and watch it for yourself and make your payment. It is worth the price, okay? It is worth every single dime. Go on Daily Wire. A link will be posted below where you can go and check it out for yourself. So what we're gonna do right now is get into this into this reaction video, and I'm gonna review a few clips with you. I have about 4 or 5 clips that I'm gonna go through right now, and I'll comment at the end of each clip and give you some thought and perspective on what I think is happening here. How about we get in right into the heart of the message? Powerful stuff. Powerful. I want to begin with this quotation here from Malcolm X. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. You know, I like Malcolm X for a number of reasons. Number one, he thought outside of the box, something different for a number of ways. I mean, I didn't like his, you know, that fighting spirit he had, but that revengeful attitude. But nevertheless, there were some things he said that were really, really true. And Malcolm X is not really highlighted so much among these movements. They don't seem to like him very much because he was way ahead of his time. Let's keep going.
Like you, it's a fake bill from the gentleman. I hope this is the driver in there. Which one?
That blue one over there.
Which one?
Step out and face away.
Please don't shoot me, Mr. Officer. Please don't shoot me, man.
Step out and face away.
Can you not shoot me, man?
I'm not shooting you. Step out and face away.
Okay. Please, man. Please. I didn't know, man.
Get out of the car.
I didn't know, Mr. Officer. I didn't know.
Get into the home.
Hey, you come back. Stay in the car. I'm sorry, Mr. Officer. I feel my knees. No, stop resisting, man. I'm not. Yes, you are. I can't breathe.
That will mark it for the first part of our video here. For those of you who are reminded of that situation, it was certainly one of those tragic situations. The movie goes into details about some of that. I'm gonna move the minute marker here to 2:50.
George Floyd deserves justice.
Okay. All right, let's pick it up from here.
And where I'm coming from. I want to be clear, this is not a defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be, implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice.
Okay, interview take 2.
It was just gut instinct, you know? It just felt like we were being told, look over here, and I guess part of my personality is when I feel that way and somebody's going, focus only here, only here, only here. I want to know, okay, but what about over there?
Yeah.
And it wasn't personal, at least not in the beginning. It wasn't personal. I would say it certainly wasn't personal until.
This video was just so disgusting, but I think it's important to understand how easily people can be corrupted in.
You know, I listened to Anna one time, and I heard her perspective. I said, this girl is crazy. This girl is just, I mean, the rhetoric I heard for the only one time. And that's all I needed to hear to say that mindset. Oh, gosh, I'll tell you. I don't know how anybody can sit down and listen to this all day long.
Into saying this type of disgusting nonsense.
Candace Owen, that rotten bitch.
If anybody's going to pretend to get their feelings hurt about what we say about Candace Owens, I will laugh and laugh and laugh.
I don't care what this did. I don't care if he personally kicked Candace Owens and her stinky.
You see, that's the problem. I don't care what he did, right? The issue is, this is the same attitude many of us had, you know, and Dave Chappelle is reflecting many of the perspective of the people during the time. But that was the problem. You know, what he did matter. We don't want to bypass that, because to understand the entire the story, you need to have a full scope of what happened, not just going with the emotion of the masses. And that's what we did. Majority of us did. I mean, I stood still. I was one of those who's like, I just don't know. I'm just gonna wait. You know, a lie can go halfway around the world while the truth is putting on his shoes. So I can't run with that. I'm one of those guys. If I don't understand it, I stay out of it until I have further light. I don't make a move. So I'm one of those individuals. So I guess it worked to my advantage when it comes to that one. But listen to what Dave Chappelle says.
That rotten bitch.
If anybody's going to pretend to get their feelings hurt about what we say about Candace Owens, I will laugh and laugh and laugh.
I don't care what this did. I don't care if he personally kicked Candace Owens and her stinky pussy. I don't know if it stinks, but I imagine it does.
Then at that moment, it became personal.
Wow.
And I thought, not only am I going to say the truth, I am going to scream the truth louder than you can scream the lies.
I've never been so hurt inside.
This was the second time he exhibited that behavior.
23 out of 24 hours in his cell.
I have been a police officer for almost 4 decades.
Until the very breath we're squeezed out of it.
That was the very last time I seen Floyd.
When you sentence my son, you will also be sentenced
every day. Every day.
I love him.
George Floyd. Drug addiction is even more powerful than a mother's love.
You guys knew him best. So, who was George Floyd?
I gotta tell you guys, it only gets better from here. For those of you who have not
increasing violence amongst protesters,
who have not gotten this movie, I will encourage you to do that. So I'm gonna move now the minute marker to 7 minutes. Let's continue. We're gonna look at the part where George Floyd roommate meets with Candace Owens, and it just gets better from here.
Based on the media narrative, and they just sort of thought, how could the media not have told us this? So right now I am researching Alvin and Teresa Scott. They were George Floyd's last known roommates. And we basically just had producers reach out and say, working on a documentary pertaining to George Floyd. That was kind of the only information that we gave them, in the hopes that saying my name would not scare them away. At least from what I'm doing a cursory search, there does not seem to be too much coverage on the roommates. Some pieces pertaining to how they were feeling during the trial, some international coverage, but I definitely don't remember these people being at the forefront. And he lived with them for over 3 years, so it'll be really interesting to see what they have to say if they speak to me and don't slam a door in my face. Fingers crossed.
Hello, Alvin Monego, and I'm George Floyd's previous roommate prior to his death. This is our house, and give you a little walkthrough and tell you a little bit about our relationship, me and Floyd. So, okay. But we still keep his name on the mailbox. Just still gets mail occasionally. Yeah, and this is us on the 4th of July, 2017. And these are our co-workers. We both work together at the Conga Lounge in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that's Floyd right here. And they never forgot him because he was a people person. He socialized, and the kids was always, looking up like, wow, that guy's pretty tall. Floyd's about 6'7". So we can head upstairs and I'll show you where Floyd's room was. Eventually we were roommates, but when I first moved here, it was just me and Floyd, and Teresa later on moved in with us. And this was his room, much bigger, the biggest room in the house, and he was a big guy, so he always enjoyed it. And the difference was like he had a desk right here, and the only thing he always kept right there was either his Bible, and he smoked cigarettes, and that was the only thing you seen on his desk. Yeah, some good moments here. It was like we lived together almost, I guess it was about 4.5 years, almost 5 years. Yeah. Him and Teresa often read the Bible together, and that was
all of these is what he did. Like he got Proverbs marked right here. He used to read this all the time. Let me see, what else did he read? He read Matthew's right here. And so he used to be in his room, and our room was next door. And I used to hear him out loud reading his Bible all the time. And I used to be listening to him, and I'm like, wow, he really do be reading that Bible,
You've been reading that Bible? Have you been reading your Bible? Get in that book. Despite the fact this situation that happened to George Floyd, it was really good to hear that he was getting into the Word, trying to clean up his life to a degree. It is a sad reality. That doesn't change the fact it did happen. But this side of the story, we needed to hear that. I needed to hear that. That is really, really good to hear. Read that Bible. Stop neglecting it. Okay.
The last day I seen Floyd, we stood up here on the top of the stairs. And this time we prayed longer than we ever did. I think we prayed for like about 5 or 8 minutes. Usually we'll do a prayer and it's like quick and everything. But this day we prayed longer than we ever prayed. And I said, Floyd, I'll see you when you get back, okay? He said, T, I'll be back. I said, promise me you coming back. He said, I promise I'll be back. And that was the last time I seen him. That was the very last time I seen Floyd, that day when we prayed upstairs, and I didn't see him no more after that.
Wow.
Hello, how are you? Hi, very nice to meet you, Alvin. Hey, Teresa, how are you?
How you doing?
So you guys, in many ways, were some of the people that were the closest to him.
Yes.
And I don't remember seeing your faces on the news or anybody talking to you. So I guess let's just start with that.
Very true. I don't remember seeing any of them talking to this group of individuals either. But we're gonna pause right here. We're gonna move on to. We're gonna fast forward now into 28 minutes because this is the next part is the interview with Ron Martinelli, where is a forensic expert, and he just tells you things after the death of George Floyd, and I mean what the cops were doing, the good and bad side of the story. So let's move on to that part.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Ron Martinelli, forensic criminologist and certified medical investigator and police practices expert. Let me just preface this. I have no dog in the fight here, all right? We classically get a lot of officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, but we take them from all sides. So my advocacy is for facts and evidence, not for people or entities. So if the officers are...
This is good to hear coming from him before he started speaking about his analysis. But the thing is, this is not about party. This is not about culture. This is not about skin color. For him, he's just gonna lay out the facts. This piece in the video really spoke to me because I'm one of those guys. I like to hear these angles of truths rather than all the emotional frenzy we heard in the media. And I wanted to see, like, what does a forensic file doctor or medical science, what was the perspective they had of the situation itself based on their examination. This guy did it for me.
doing what they're supposed to be doing as they were trained to do it, I'm going to tell you. If they're not, I'm also going to tell you that.
What was your assessment of the police behavior in seeing the full video and seeing how things played out?
They make contact with Mr. Floyd, and that is totally appropriate because they're investigating a third person's report of criminality.
Not moving. Put your hands behind your back then. I'm not gonna do nothing. Stop resisting, man. Stand up. Please, man. Stand up. Why are you doing me like this? Stand up. Come on. We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car.
So for the officers, what they have to do is they have to begin an investigation to ask him probative questions, seeking more evidence to determine whether a crime has occurred.
All right, what's your name? George. We're here because it sounds like you gave a fake bill to the individuals in there. Yeah.
So once they put the handcuffs on Mr. Floyd should have known, albeit he's under the influence of drugs,
Are you on something right now?
No, nothing. Because you acting real erratic.
that he must obey the officer's directions, orders, and commands. He cannot resist arrest.
I hear you, but you are going to face this door right now. Listen up, stop.
I don't leave it, man. Please don't do that.
Take a seat.
I'm going in, Mr. I'm going
No,
in.
you're not.
And so when Mr. Floyd gets in a car and he claims that he's claustrophobic,
Right, claustrophobic is exactly what he said.
I'm claustrophobic. I'm claustrophobic.
Stay on.
I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
I think if I was an officer, I'd be saying, wait a minute, you showed up in a car. You wouldn't get in a car if you thought you were claustrophobic. The officers placed him in a position that's referred to as the maximum restraint position. In other words, he's prone, stomach down, on the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent. On May 25th of 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him.
You would agree, Chief, that from the perspective of Miss Frazier's camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee is on the neck of Mr. Floyd.
Yes, true.
Would you agree that from the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade?
Yes.
They had to have the jury believe that it was a neck restraint, it was the knee on the neck, it was asphyxiation that killed George Floyd. However, there was a ton of evidence that George Floyd consumed a toxic, lethal cocktail of fentanyl and methamphetamine.
You know, recently I did a study on fentanyl and methamphetamine. Boy, just fentanyl itself, I was like, oh Lord, this stuff is seriously crazy. It is the new crack cocaine today. It is heroin to the next level. I'm not a drug expert. I'm not gonna get into that. I never experienced no play with that. But nevertheless, from what I've discovered, it's one of those the easiest drug to make. And also it's so potent and so effective and addictive and deadly. When you it blows your mind when you look into it as well. Yeah, going back to our thing here, he is breaking it down, man.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"?
Yes, it did.
Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me.
Wow.
And so they had to continuously inculcate the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that was the story. I remember hearing that story. We can't speak about the drug part. We can't speak about any of that. At least to even go and mention it during those times was considered the worst type of crime. You know, and again, we can talk about the history and the addiction that Mr. Floyd had struggled with for so long. According to his roommate, that was part of the reasons why they ended up together. But we can't talk about that because it has to fall in line with the narrative. There we are today. You know, all the results of that. How different things could have been were it not for the drugs. How different things could have been if Mr. Floyd had cooperated, you know. How different things could have been. This is happening in the world today, and so many, we don't hear cases like this that often. I mean, we hear cases of people dying, but that particular situation here has totally transformed America in ways we've never seen before.
Yes, it did.
Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me. And so they had to continuously inculcate the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd, and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it. As Lindsay and the toxicologist presented that awful testimony.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances. It would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due to fentanyl toxicity.
Oh, wow. What a testimony. So what is he saying is, yeah, that could have happened if it happened in a situation where George Floyd didn't have a knee on his neck. So by having a knee on his neck, supposedly that precipitated his death, and that was the cause. But the drug, we're not going to consider it in this case. Even though it was in the system, we're going to ignore these factors because he had a knee on his neck. Therefore, the knee on his neck is the reason why he passed away. But this could have happened even if there was no knee on his neck, which we don't really know. We can't run with it either. But the fact is, knee on his neck, knee on his back, drugs was involved, inches. There were many other factors that we need to consider here. Oh man, I think we reacted way too quickly with this. We ran with it, man. We didn't ask enough questions, unfortunately. Our emotion took the driver's seat, and that wasn't supposed to be, you know. Prior, wow. Huh.
I know I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Take a seat. I can't breathe. Here, come on out.
The autopsy is generally broken down by, number one, how the body is presented, and you know what his height and weight is, and then it goes through the neurological system, exterior trauma, interior trauma, but I go right to the cardiovascular system. And there I look at the heart weight. How much does the heart weigh? And then I take a look for key words. I compare the heart weight to the height and weight of the individual, to what the toxicology report says, and I look for certain words or evidence of something called cardiomegaly. Cardiomegaly means an enlarged heart. And if a person has cardiomegaly, their chances of sudden cardiac arrest rise by 150 times, not 150%, 150 times. That is significant. And then we have the whole issue of the police encounter and the basal metabolic rate rising. Think about him being agitated, chaotic, excited, and his heart is pumping, pumping, pumping. There is zero empirical forensic evidence, medical evidence of any biological mechanism, physiological mechanism that would have interfered with George Floyd's ability to get sufficient oxygenated blood up into the brain. There's zero evidence of that.
Boy.
There was another passenger.
We can stop here. Oh, this is strong. This is strong. It is getting better. It's getting better.
Take Anthony.
All right, let me let me move forward to 47 minutes, and then we're gonna pick up from here. There we go. This is a pastor, Pastor Charles, a Kenyan pastor. His testimony is powerful too. Take a listen.
My name is Charles and I grew up in Kenya.
How long have you lived in Minneapolis?
I came to Minneapolis in May of 1997, so it's been 27 years.
27 years.
Yes.
What was this city before the George Floyd riots?
Well, it was just a typical Midwestern city with low crime and hardworking people, and we just lived here and enjoyed life together.
Yeah. And then things took a bit of a turn, and this is something different, would you say?
Well, what we saw was like a venting of anger. It was complete opposite of Minnesota nice. And we saw anger, mayhem, looting, destruction of property, burning of police precincts, and it was completely foreign to me. I'm used to something like this in third world countries, but not in America, and quite honestly, not in Minnesota.
Not in Minnesota. This is something that I think I've never seen before in any city that I've lived in, at least. It says, "You are now entering the free state of George Floyd." What does that mean?
It means this is an autonomous zone, and it operates outside the laws of United States.
Wow.
And anything that happens here is run by a community, and they do whatever they want.
They do whatever they want. How is that allowed in the United States?
The city of Minneapolis has been negotiating.
Negotiating with whom?
With the community.
Wow. So the city is being held hostage by the community that is running the autonomous zone. Do I have that understood?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we are now entering a state where really anything goes, right? Really sort of anything goes, right?
Well, I think anything goes here. We've seen death. We've seen a man shot right in front of us. We've seen a woman who was pregnant shot right in front of us. And right here, we had a huge bus, like a school bus, and it was a clinic. It was a medical clinic, and the number one thing they were treating during the time of the riots was gunshot wounds right here.
As I'm looking around, there's so many empty shops on the block, things that are boarded up. How does that make you feel to see that? Is there ever going to be life again on this street?
Well, I feel like there has been a tremendous loss of the way of life here has changed, the economy, the destruction of businesses. Most of the businesses here that were destroyed, the insurance would not be able to cover that.
Right.
And so it's a hard thing for people to rebuild themselves, especially after what they went through.
It almost seems like a vigil is being kept here.
Well, this is pretty much the body of George Floyd. This is where he lay dead and breathed his last right here.
Right. Wow. And so the idea is that no one should enter. This is sort of a sacred place. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can see this. It's pretty much a holy ground.
Right. Now, you're a pastor, so I just wanted to ask you, how does it make you feel, right, knowing obviously who George Floyd was and how he lived his life, to see that this has been transformed into a holy ground, you know, as if this is where Jesus Christ took his last breath?
Well, we have...
Listen, not Jesus, you know, nothing, not even close. But again, I respect part of the narrative, because a life loss is a life loss despite how it happened. You know, I don't wish death on anyone, but he's not the Messiah. Let's stop crowning him king. Let's stop making him a martyr. That's not true. We all know. We can ignore everything else and keep going with our emotions as we did. But before he answers this question, I want to dial back just 5 minutes into this video just to show you the way we acted.
His name.
George Floyd.
Breaking news. Protest peacefully. We're kind of just helping.
Yeah, this is the reaction of the people, man.
Outside this grocery store is now home for a memorial.
We protest peacefully. We're kind of just helping each other out and rallying together as a community.
We need to stand together with each other.
We're here to serve justice for injustice. Say his name.
George Floyd.
Say his name.
George Floyd.
Breaking news in South Minneapolis. The situation has become dangerous.
Individual breaching the gate at the 3rd precinct.
Getting close to blocking the pen. Is anyone copying this?
We all here. All lives matter.
You want your people to die? You coward!
3rd precinct has been compromised.
They're about to breach the back gate. They're taking heavy rock.
3rd precinct is up in flames.
Minneapolis is waking up to a lot of its buildings on fire.
You saw chaos just erupt.
Fires are still burning.
We are seeing looting throughout the city.
Bricks are being thrown at police officers. We are seeing increasing violence amongst protesters throughout the country.
Cities are erupting into chaos and violence.
How long can you be peaceful when your people are dying?
We're out here trying to show them that we're angry.
This is not just about George Floyd. It's about everything that's happened in our world.
For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight.
Yeah, I did a whole reaction video to that. But let's ask the question. These reactions that these people had, it was just wrong. I mean, when I was watching this stuff, I'm like, nah, you can't do that. Because you're angry about something doesn't give you the right to tear everything else apart. But again, you couldn't tell anybody anything during this time. There's nothing you can say to convince anyone, because it was just the way you were supposed to accept the narrative.
There has been a tremendous, it's outrageous.
Here is the question again.
Right. And how does it make you feel when you hear leaders, saying that the death of George Floyd is more significant than Martin Luther King?
It's outrageous.
It's outrageous.
Yes, it is. It's foolish.
I guess I would have assumed when Black Lives Matter announced that they raised over $90 million, who knows how much over, on the back of the George Floyd riots and the sprees. Where is that money?
I don't know. It's not here.
It's not here. All right, we can stop right here. We're gonna move to the last part of our video here. This is where some of the spending for BLM is described. So how about we fast forward 53:40. All right, let's go. This is when he gets better. And again, to get the full scope of what's going on here, you need to go and watch this thing.
And we wouldn't have on everything, the rent, light, gas. So when it happened to Floyd, everything fell back on me and Alvin. So
you got a car out there, it's just sitting there. We couldn't do nothing with it because he didn't. We don't have the title. They won't take it or move it.
It is just shocking to me because of how much money was raised to think that where he lived, the bills weren't being covered.
That's crazy.
So Black Lives Matter released their 990 IRS filings. And of course, I wanted to jump right into it and find out exactly what happened to the approximate $80 million that was raised by them between July 1st of 2020 and June 30th, 2020.
Do you know what you can do with $80 million in a black community? You can change everything. Everything. My Lord. $80 million. Lord have mercy.
21. Okay, Vivek, so during the George Floyd death and the aftermath, you were in Silicon Valley, is that correct?
Yeah, I was running a biotech company, actually, and I was CEO at the time, that's right.
What was the corporate reaction in Silicon Valley?
There was a pledge of allegiance to one cause, to turn this man, who had died in a tragic death, no doubt, into some type of new modern messiah figure. And I thought that the religious quality of every company bending the knee was a bit odd, and I was actually pretty keen on making sure that I didn't lie to my employees, that I didn't tell them something that I didn't believe about this. I sent an employee all email, and I said, look, I understand there's racial riots across the country, or there's unrest across the country. I hope everybody's safe. Let us know if you need us to support you. That was about it. And I remembered the reaction that I got, that somehow that failed to meet the moment because I didn't recite the same ritual incantation that every other CEO was pledging allegiance to across the country.
How dare you? You weren't supposed to think.
$970,000.
You weren't supposed to think for yourself. You were supposed to go along with the general narrative. Let's move on now. Let's get some numbers and then we bring this to an end.
She paid Paul $8.
Let's hear some more. All right, right there.
Well, Patrisse Cullors' brother, Paul Cullors, is a graffiti artist by trade. That's what he's done his entire life. He's done graffiti. Patrisse instead hired her brother to do security for her. She paid Paul $840,000. That's almost $1 million in just 1 year to her graffiti artist brother, his newly established security firm.
Wow.
Now, that makes her a great sister, but perhaps she's an even better baby mama because Patrisse also gave funding from Black Lives Matter to take care of the man who fathered her son. His name is Damon Turner, and he received $970,000 from BLM to his company Trap Heels LLC, which purportedly provided live production and media. So that makes Patrisse a great sister, a wonderful baby mama, and also, by the way, she's...
Oh, gosh, you're killing me, Candace. So the problem really was they didn't have a proper system in place to manage the money, to make sure it's properly being funneled. Patrisse had way too much power and had way too much control over the finance of Black Lives Matter. It was just too much donated to a corporation run by 3 women in such a powerful position. It just was never supposed to be that way. You know, this movement was not properly organized to help people. So the few that were in leadership position abused their power. That really is what happened here. So it is the greatest lie ever sold.
She's a fun mom because one of the events that Patrisse organized at her BLM mansion was for her young son's birthday party. Nothing says taking on police brutality quite like hosting a birthday party for your young son in a Los Angeles mansion paid for by donors to the cause. Patrisse likes parties, by the way, because she also threw a party there to celebrate the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And yeah, that's somewhat suspicious because what do Democrats have to do with Black Lives Matter? I think I'll just leave that question open-ended. Also suspicious is the fact that Black Lives Matter designated a whopping $8 million to an out-of-country grant. What? I thought this charity was about addressing police brutality in the United States. Apparently, to do that, you need to send $8 million to Toronto, Canada, to an organization named M4BJ. They purchased a $6.3 million, 10,000 square foot downtown property in Toronto. And I should also mention that M4BJ is run by Patrisse's wife, Janaya Khan, because it is. She is the co-founder, believe it or not. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Candace.
Janaya Khan is
killing us. You're killing us.
Non-conforming. These terms can be quite sensitive, so let me just use photos to illustrate my point. Janaya used to look like this, and now she looks like this. Now that information would be entirely irrelevant if it wasn't for the way that Patrisse Cullors saw it fit to spend the rest of Black Lives Matter's money. Ready for some BLM pride?
well, according to their IRS form, $200,000 went to the Transgender Justice Funding Project. Another $200,000 went to the Transgender United Fund. Another $200,000 went to the Transgendered Law Center.
Okay.
Another $200,000 went to Black Transgendered Media. Another $200,000.
Oh, stop! This is outrageous. So, this was not about Black Lives Matter. This was about Trans Lives Matter. We could simply, okay, let's change the title. And this was a move about trans. And it does make a lot of sense because during the Black Lives Matter movements and many other riots that we saw, people were carrying transgender signs. This was something to take notice of. A lot of trans people mix themselves with the movement itself, and we are marginalized too. We are a victim too, you know? So it does make sense that they benefit so much from the move, and the money keeps going up, and it's disturbing to watch. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Went to the Transgendered Variant and Intersex Justice Project. Another $200K went to the Transgendered District. By the way, if you're wondering what that is purportedly going to be the all transgender district. And I guess that's really, really important for Black America advancement in society, I guess, or whatever. Another $200K went to the St. James Infirmary. That organization, by the way, is for, according to their website, it's run by sex workers and is for them. Specifically, escorts, BDSM workers, strippers, peep show workers, phone sex operators, and webcam performers. It was actually the St.
This is crazy, man. This is crazy. They not only do they owe black people an apology, but all the donors, they need to apologize, and somebody gotta go behind bars. Somebody gotta get locked up, because this is wickedness. This is fraudulent moves. This is evil. That's not right. That's not right. And George Floyd's family deserve better than that. His roommate should have been taken care of. This is nonsense. How did we fall for this? We trusted our emotion instead of our intellect. We trusted feelings instead of evidence. We trusted the media instead of doing our own research. We were taken advantage of. That's why when the story is hot, you know, when it's hot straight out of the oven. Calm down, relax, don't run with it. And I'm learning to do more of this more and more in my life. Whenever I hear something that is very juicy, something that is wild, something that's hard to believe, I sit back. And the more they turn up the heat, this is going on, that's happening, the hype, when I hear how hype the story is the less I'm reacting. The reason for that is oftentimes when you hear it from the first time, it always sounds good. You can't run with it. Oftentimes the rest of the story has yet to come out, you know? Just like C-19, we have the same issue with that. This is going on, and then as you wait out, you find out there was more to the story. There was something else going on. So it's like all this stuff, people ran with it, did not do enough homework, did not check out the evidence, trusted the entire system, ran with their emotion, made the decision, and here we are today. Trans community is doing exceptionally well, but black people in their community are not helped at all. $80 million. What have we done for the black community? What have we done for any community? Because, you know, even the Chinese Lives Matter was part of that movement. How did they benefit from that? But the trans did. It makes sense because when you make the connection with Patrisse Cullors being a lesbian and so on, and she supports that lifestyle and everything, it shows that we were just bamboozled. We've been lied to. This is the greatest lie ever sold in our century. Lord have mercy. Thank you so much, Candace, for exposing the lie.
James Infirmary that created the Transgendered District. So that's just an organization within another organization, which, by the way, you see a lot of when you go through these documents. So yeah, going to be apparently great great big things involving sex workers in the future for Black America.
Yeah.
In continuation,
That's what we
the
need.
Center for Halstead received $200,000 from Black Lives Matter. They are Chicago's community center dedicated to securing the health and well-being of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and queer people of Chicago. Similarly, we have the Audre Lorde Project, which received $200,000, and according to their website, they are a lesbian, gay, bisexual, two-spirit, trans, and gender nonconforming people of color community organizing center.
That's what we need.
Another $400,000 went to Transgender Advocates Knowledgeable Empowering, or TAKE, as it's known for short. The founder of that organization is a transgendered individual by the name of Darrenisha Duncan Boyd. Darrenisha is also the executive director of the Transgendered United Fund, which I mentioned earlier, which secured $200,000. So a total
So this was a good time for transgender people to make a lot of money. If you're trans, doing the Black Lives Matter movement and the death of George Floyd, this was a money-making business. I mean, they benefited big time on that. At least I can give them credit. Lord have mercy. The devil's in the detail.
$600,000 of BLM money went to a transgendered woman named Darrenisha.
Who are these people? Who are these people?
Charities. I found that piece to be very interesting. Here is Darrenisha describing in a 2020 interview how they were able to use that money that was received to the organization to purchase more real estate.
We're opening up a new resource center here, and the resource center is almost 3 times as big as our last space that we was in.
Wow.
So we have lots of space and lots of rooms for our clients to come in and enjoy.
I noticed that real estate seems to be a common theme amongst these transgendered organizations. Remember, there's the first ever transgender district, and there are also a couple of houses that are named on their IRS documents. For example, an additional $200,000 was given to the House of Tulip. According to their website, the House of Tulip provides zero-barrier housing to trans and gender non-conforming people. But the one that really stood out as the most nonsensical is the $200,000 that went to the Griffin Gracie Retreat and Educational Center, known as House of Gigi for short. According to that website, they provide services and resources that positively impact the lives, history, and visibility of transgender, gender questioning, and gender non-conforming persons. They admit that they purchased a property in Little Rock, Arkansas back in 2019, and that property was supposed to serve as an oasis and a retreat for transgendered person, but they admit, also on the website, that they actually never held such a retreat. First, because their founder had a stroke and was recovering, and then it was COVID-19, so they still couldn't host a retreat. And despite having never hosted a retreat at this amazing oasis property that they purchased, in 2021, they announced that they purchased a second property next door to the first one. So,
goodies.
Yeah. Now, all of the organizations that I just mentioned, none of them, not one, is up to date on filing a tax return with the IRS, which is required for charities, because charities, remember, they don't pay taxes. In other words,
501c3.
I'm not able to tell you how any of these transgendered organizations spent the money that BLM poured into their organizations during the 2020 and 2021 tax year. If you continue to look through BLM IRS docs, you'll notice that they gave millions of dollars to various Black Lives Matter organizations throughout America, or at least at first glance, it appears that they did. A closer look, you'll see that they actually dispersed that funding to organizations that were in care of Black Lives Matter.
Enough. Guys, I have to stop it here. It gets crazy, okay? So, first of all, boy, I don't want to, this is getting me on fire, but I'm going to stop. I'll save my thoughts. I'll comment. I'll talk to you in a comment below. Final thoughts. This movie is powerful. The evidence was strong. Candace Owen did an amazing job. She interviewed a number of people that was really, really good. And she made that connection and exposing the lie. The goal was to expose that the BLM movement itself was a narcissistic movement. It was driven for, selfish reasons, for things that were associated for the founders, things that they wanted to be done to help them to benefit rather than the average black man. But this was not about black people. It never was. It was not about cops. It was not about whites. This was a selfish move. It is very obvious. She did an amazing job with that. And I will recommend this movie for anyone. Check it out and be enlightened. And I will say, next to that movie, watch Uncle Tom 2. If you want me to do a reaction or review of that, I'll be more than willing to. Uncle Tom 2 goes into the fabric of the BLM movement. It goes into the fabric of what these people were doing and how money were being spent to do all these riots. Some of these people were rioting, and even the way they were organized. If you want to understand some of this stuff, you have to watch Uncle Tom 2 and study into the fabric of communism and fascism. And I think his name is Kelensky. His name might be, I might have the wrong name. There were so many different factors that played a role in that. So that will help you to better balance the depths of this movie. But Candace Owen overall has done an amazing job with this one. I give her a lot of credit, a lot of respect as well. But I'm going to end it on this note here. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 5 verses 11 and 12, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Expose them. For it is a shame even to speak of the things that they do in secret. That's what she was doing. That's what she was doing. And guess what? Well done. Now we know Black Lives Matter as a whole was a fraud. It's dead. We might as well say it's dead. It's over. We don't need to invest our money, our sentiments, our sympathy in it no longer, because we know what they were doing with the money. Thank you. Goodbye. You did do a good job deceiving many of us. But now that we know you are exposed, we want nothing to do with you anymore. And we'll watch out for the next one. We'll keep a close eye, a keen eye before we move with our emotion and start reacting based on what the news is saying. We're going to spend a little bit more time digging and asking a lot more questions before we run with the narrative. That's what I've learned. And that's what we should all aspire to learn from these types of movements. And I know there's more to come. There's more to come. Don't get me wrong. The devil got some trick off his sleeve, and you might think BLM was the last. I'm telling you, we have greater deceptions to come. So watch out, be alert, be on your knees, spend some time in your word, and ask for God to give you wisdom and discernment, because in these times, this world has gone crazy and there are deceivers out there. Their business is to work for their own selfish reason, not for the benefit of the people we need. Until next time, and as always, look unto Jesus and live by faith. Have a good one. Bye.
It became personal.
Wow.
And I thought, not only am I going to say the truth, I am going to scream the truth louder than you can scream the lies.